He told me that I would look good pregnant. Big yikes. What was the creepiest thing someone said on the first date? He wanted to go for a walk at the park with me at 4 a.m., so when I said no he said, "Don't worry. I won't rape you," and gave me a twisted smile. He was in the military, Canadian. I asked him if he ever did any volunteer work overseas with the military and he said, "No. I joined the military to kill people, not to help people." Chugged my beer and got out of there as fast as I could. "I want you to carve your initials on my thigh with a knife." She was very serious. She was driving us back home from the restaurant and started saying things like, "You know, you're in my car now, I technically can take you wherever I want. You're like my prisoner." I laughed the first time she mentioned it because I'm into dark humor, but when she kept going on with it, little did she know once I got out of the car that would be the last time she'd ever see me. "Look, this has to go well. Both of my brother's wives are pregnant with their second children. Do not let me down," said to me within 3 minutes of sitting down. Showed me a long list on her phone of, if I can guess without exaggeration, at least 60 to 70 baby names for when she has a kid, and joked about having baby fever. They were all really country bumpkin names like Brecken and Gatlin too, which somehow made it more unpalatable for me. She's only 21. I don't blame you for breaking up with her. Went out with a girl one night and after dinner, she drove me up into the mountains. I was new to the area, and after a while, when there were no more lights, she started talking about serial killers. I still remember her saying, "I used to think about getting away with stuff like that sometimes. Can I cut you and drink it?" She was serious. "This is a nice place, I've seen you eating here before." This can be fairly casual to super creepy, entirely depending on tone and context though. It was their kitchen. "I just really like mustard," as she continues, "suck mustard packets." Worst part, we were at a somewhat nice restaurant. She brought mustard to eat. Not what he said but what he did. He fricking stole my keys while I was out of the room and took off into the night. We had an hours-long standoff where he wouldn't answer my calls or texts begging him to return them. I stood by his truck that was parked a few blocks away making sure that he didn't leave with them. Eventually, he dropped them off in my car and I got a ride home from the cops. Honestly, one of the scariest episodes of my life. It wasn't something that someone said, but he stole my credit card out of my purse when I wasn't looking. Luckily on the way home I stopped for coffee and noticed it was missing. Froze the account that second. Edit, okay, let me edit this because I didn't give enough context. It was a horrible date. Please don't confuse this with a sweet guy and a fun date. This guy was incredibly misogynistic, talking bad about his ex-wife, saying most women are whores and bad mothers. He was saying why he doesn't date within his old-school Romanian gypsy community is because the women lay there like dead fish during sex, and how he thinks American women are more fun. I know, I clearly didn't vet him enough before hanging out. Of course, he went on about politics and how he wants a wall as well to keep out the Mexicans and the Arabs because they are dirty people and Jew you down on everything. His words, not mine. He said he knows this because he's an immigrant and worked along immigrants for years until he built up his own business, but the lazy Mexicans never rise up to own their own business. Needless to say, I gave him the benefit of the doubt and just froze my account while I searched everywhere for 3 days. I did have the card an hour before the date, and I feel like prefacing this with the fact that I have never ever in my entire life misplaced my card. However, for me, you just know. You know when you've been played, you get that gut feeling. Went on a Tinder date to the movies when I was 18. He picked me up in his truck and played terrible loud depressing music. In the theater, he was on his phone swiping on Tinder the whole time, then leaned over and told me that I was lucky to be out with him because all these other girls wanted to be with him. Yikes. My roommate picked me up when I excused myself to the bathroom. "My son is gonna love having you around. Lady, we talked twice on Tinder and I've only known you for 5 minutes. Ease up on the stepdaddy talk." Full disclosure, not long after I met a nice woman with 3 children, I adopted all 3 not long after we married. I met her on Tinder. This guy wasn't talking at all and I only brought a few talking points cause normally they talk the whole time. I didn't have anything else to say and asked him to start talking and he said, "What I want to talk about can't be said in public." When I ended the date he thought we were going to go to my place to talk and I said no. I got in my car, noted what car he got into, and took a few breaths to calm down. I looked around and his car was still there. I waited 30 minutes before he left the parking lot and stayed another 15 before I left. We would have cute babies, or my personal favorite, for Halloween we could go as a slave and master, haha. Get it? Because you're black? Haha. You've actually been talking to my mother. I'm not very good at things like this. We had sexted. Edit to explain, I'm a girl and mom was texting for her son. A one-night stand once told me I smelt like his mom. At least it was smell and not taste. This is not my story, but my mother's. My mom was a pioneer in online dating. She was really interested in finding someone special. She agreed to meet a guy for dinner first mistake, and went in to be seated prior to him arriving. He came in, the waitress brought menus and he set down his menu and the first words he spoke were asking my mom if she has ever known anyone who had a PP enlargement. He then went on to explain that he had flown cross-county for this operation and it had gone wrong. He went into great specifics about just how wrong. My mother excused herself to the ladies' room and left out the back door. We still laugh out loud when she reminds us of her search for Mr. Right. Within knowing each other about an hour he told me he had never wanted kids before, but the moment we met he felt it biologically. Then he told me he wanted to be my son's stepfather as well. After getting us lost on the way back to my friend's house, late at night, in a state I was only visiting. What, do you think I'm going to take you out into the woods and rape you, lol? He had a loaded gun rack in his truck, and a knife on his belt. I was 15. It was not funny. Better lock it down now, huh? While you're ripe for the taking. Referring to my low self-esteem that he picked up on. You look just like my sister, and later in the date, he admitted that's something he liked about me. Needless to say, no second date with Jaime Lannister. I was Joan of Arc in my former life. I want to tear you apart. And your friend, too. Kind of a toss-up, in my humble opinion. Ooh, I can answer this one. A few months ago I matched with a guy on Tinder and things seemed to be going well over chat, so we ended up meeting for a date. As soon as we met I had a bad feeling about him, not as in he was a creep, but I just had a vibe we weren't going to progress further. He seemed a bit off and not as friendly as he appeared online. I thought I might as well have a meal and chalk this down to experience if this doesn't pan out. Anyway, during the course of the meal alarm bells began to go off when he started referring to women as stupid and pointless and only good for one thing. I began to get really uncomfortable and was trying to think of a good excuse to leave. Of course, I got naturally defensive and said talking about women like that was derogatory, and then he started to complain that there was vegetables in his burger, referring to the lettuce, and proceeded to pick it out, calling the waitress who took our order a dumb bitch because he specifically said no vegetables in his meal. Anyway, said lettuce ended up landing in my handbag, which completely pissed me off, and I finally said that I had to go because honestly at that point I felt like shoving the lettuce in his fat misogynist asshole face. To say I ran as fast I could to my car is an understatement. Luckily I got to the restaurant before we met up, and so he didn't know my parking spot. As soon as I got in my car I ended up unmatching him from Tinder and blocked his cell phone number, but later on, I still received a text from another number saying, "Hey, it's Brad from Tinder. I know pretty much all I need to know about you, so let's have sex, yes?" Like what the frick? It sounded so creepy, like he was analyzing me to see if I was suitable to sleep with. And going by the way I ran off like I was on fire and blocked him. Should have told him I wasn't interested. I didn't reply to him obviously and blocked that number. Then I get another message from another number saying, "Cock-teasing whore and I'll see you again one day and then I'll have my moment." That was the last thing I heard from him. Not only was he an utter cunt, but he was creepy too. And he had a face the size of a planet. So this dude and I kept randomly being on the same bus. We would never talk, but make eyes. A few months into this, we get off at the main bus hub and he approaches me and invites me to dinner. There was a teriyaki place right across the street. So we went and had good conversation. I had a good time. When it came to separating ways, it wasn't what he said per se, but the fact that he brought up his hand and cupped my cheek. He just sorta left it there in silence. And then slowly grazed his fingers down along my face as he pulled away. He asked me if I'd rather go on a cruise or to a resort for our honeymoon. Then sent me a text later to tell me he showed one of his clients my picture and the client told him his girlfriend was pretty. This was in the early 00s when I agreed to go on a date with a persistent coworker at Target. He showed up to my house with a giant bouquet of flowers. My parents invited him in to check him out and spoke with him for a bit. His story didn't really check out. As a volunteer firefighter I flew to help on 9/11 from Syracuse. No flights obviously happened, but then all of a sudden he pulled out a disposable camera. When my mom asked him what it was for, he said CHS 135 is going on vacation for a week and I want a picture to remember her by, and like from a dark comedy. We then heard the click of the shutter. I faked being suddenly sick and my mom told him I wasn't feeling well. Luckily it was only a summer job. Actually, it was me that said it. Took a girl to see an Elton John concert. I was a little intoxicated. We were kissing. I was young and aroused. I whispered into her ear, "I would kill to make love to you." Embarrasses me to this day. Repeatedly brought up the fact that she isn't crazy or violent. Surprise, surprise, because she was both. I invited my ex to join us for lunch. What the frick? And did the ex show up? She did show up. We went to McDonald's. The ex was really nice and tried to make things less awkward. She didn't know it was a date. She thought she was just meeting with her ex for lunch and she was shocked that I was there. Whilst my date was in the bathroom, the ex confided in me that she was hoping to get back together. I told her that's fine because I had no interest whatsoever at this point. There was no second date and those two ended up back together a few weeks later. Added to explain more, we met at his house first and he was taking me out to lunch somewhere. Surprise. I didn't know it was McDonald's until we pulled into the car park. He didn't mention having invited his ex until we were already there and she showed up soon after. I would have left before she got there but he took me there in his car and it would have been quite an expensive taxi back to his house to get my car. After lunch, he took me back to his house and the ex came in the car too. He tried to put a movie on but I insisted on leaving. He then took my car keys off the bench and locked himself in his bedroom while he hid them from me. I did get a bit scared at this point. His housemate helped me find my keys while my date started the movie with his ex and I left without saying anything more. What do you think? What was the creepiest out of these? And do you have a story? Share it with us in the comment section.